Thanks, Marty, and thanks to all of you for being here on a snowy day. This is going to be very different than what you just heard. I'm Mark DeSouza. I'm a biochemist by training, been on the biotech industry 25 years or so. I founded 8 different ventures, had 4 exits. These all have been venture-backed companies. 4 of my companies are part of a public company called Bridge Bio today. It's a $5 billion public company. And I'm interested in rare disease. Very proud to have 2 FDA-approved drugs for a rare genetic disease that's now part of Takeda. I am interested in sort of good science and, working on diseases for which there are no current treatments. That's really my thing. And I've typically worked with founders from academic institutions, and one of them I've worked with now 8 years, and this is his brainchild. I was sitting here in New York almost 6 years ago, where he told me, you can treat cancer non-invasively with no side effects. And it's like, what are you smoking, right? So, but we've really proven this now in a rare pediatric brain tumor, where we're really seeing game-changing results that I'll share with you today. Since I can't really broadcast video from within the room, my colleague Michael Bellis, who's on the Zoom, is going to advance the slides. So the technology I'm going to share with you today is called Sonodynamic Therapy, and as the name implies, there's ultrasound involved. It's a non-invasive way to treat cancer. Next slide. We're really the pioneer of sonodynamic therapy. We're in the clinic now. We're in phase 2 clinical trials in this rare pediatric brain tumor called DIPG. We've got very strong IP on the combination of our drug and ultrasound devices that we've built, as well as we've in-licensed. We're based in California, and we've raised about $25 million to date in price rounds. We've received about $10 million in funding from the National Cancer Institute, the FDA, and the Ivy Foundation. And I'm here today seeking $5 million to fill out a convertible note round that will convert into our Series C financing. We've been very fortunate to have a collaboration with Full Sky Partners here in New York, and Norm Friedland, who's on the Zoom. They're really partnering this idea of a return on mission funding strategy, where we've got a collaboration with them to raise up to $50 million from family foundations. These are 501(c)(3) foundations to fund our mission of treating pediatric brain cancer non-invasively. And so the funds we want to raise in our Series C and from this return on mission funding strategy will fund us to an NDA filing. That's the application you make with the FDA to get a drug approved. Next slide. This is a drug device combination, okay? And the way it's regulated from an FDA point of view is that the FDA regulates the drug. We're in the drug division, the oncology division of FDA, and we're going to be developing and selling a drug. The device at the top that you see on this slide comes from an Israeli company called Incytech that develops ultrasound technology. They've been around 22 years and really the experts in ultrasound delivery. The ultrasound device we're using, which you can see at the top, is that orange helmet that fits on the patient's head and delivers non-invasive ultrasound to the brain tumors. And the machine behind it is an MR machine. So the patient receives our drug, which is on the left. It's intravenous aminolevulinic acid, or ALA. We give the injection. We wait about 6 hours. The tumors accumulate the drug and convert it into a compound that the ultrasound activates to kill the tumor without affecting normal cells. That's the precision medicine we have here. Then the patient goes into the MR machine with this helmet on their head, and we can direct the ultrasound to the tumor, and that ultrasound activates the metabolite of the drug to kill the tumor cell without affecting normal cells, okay? So that's the device we're using in brain tumors. We're starting in this pediatric brain tumor called diffuse intrinsic pontine glioma, or DIPG. I'll talk more about that and share some clinical data with you, as well as some videos where you'll see really the impact we're having with this new technology on patients' quality of life. The device at the bottom, I'm not going to talk about, but that's the expansion of our company. Once we have a proof of concept in DIPG, we're going to expand into bladder cancer. And you'll soon appreciate why we've chosen bladder cancer. Next slide. So I've kept this very science light, but what I want to share with you is that the reason we picked brain cancer and bladder cancer is because our drug is already FDA approved to image these cancers. The pink color that you see on these slides is our drug being converted by the tumor into a compound that fluoresces pink under blue light. So in brain surgery, the neurosurgeon gives the patient our drug, wait about 6 hours, the tumor is converted into this pink stuff that you can see under blue light. And that really shows you the selectivity of our drug for the tumor. All the black stuff around it is normal brain. So only the tumor lights up. You see the same thing in bladder cancer. The image on the left, the brown image, is just under white light. You don't even see the tumor. But under blue light on the right, you can see the pink stuff lighting up. That's the tumor. So what we can do with ultrasound is target this pink stuff to blow up the tumor cell without affecting normal cells. Next slide. So this one just tells you how many different cancers take up our drug and convert it into the pink stuff that can be activated by ultrasound to kill the tumors. So this is very much a platform technology where we're starting off with proof of concept in a rare pediatric brain tumor called DIPG, and then the plan is to expand into all these other tumors. It's a new way to treat cancer, and we're the first ones in the clinic doing this. Next slide. So this is just the mechanism. I'm not going to dwell on it, other than to say that the little ring that you see in green, that's the compound that the tumors make from our drug. And when you activate it with ultrasound, you get the creation of reactive oxygen species. You always hear about free radicals being bad for you, right? These are oxygen-free radicals, and they blow up the cancer cell. So this mechanism has been very well studied. 3 independent labs have shown that it works in animal models, and we were the first ones to show that it also works in a clinical trial. And I'm going to spare you the details of our first clinical trial that showed that this mechanism really does work. That was done at the Ivy Brain Tumor Center in Phoenix and fully funded by mission funding from the Ivy Foundation that we're very grateful for. Next slide. So what I'm going to do now is just show you just one piece of data that got us really excited early on because it's pretty graphic. What you're seeing here are animal brains. That's what the MRI images are. And you can see at the top in the controls, the tumors grew over 28 days. With ultrasound alone, the tumors grew over 28 days. With the drug, ALA, tumors grew. But together, ultrasound plus ALA, what's called SDT or sonodynamic therapy, you see the tumors disappear by day 28. And if you take the brains of these animals out and stain them, you see no tumor in the sonodynamic therapy treated animals. It's a cure in the animals, okay? Now this is not likely to translate into humans, but it tells us that you can shrink tumors, and on the bottom right graph, the red line there shows that 100% of the animals survived, okay? We had a cure in the animals, as they survived, all of them, and all the controls died, okay? So this gave us a lot of confidence to go into our first in-man clinical study where we showed that the mechanism of free radical formation is real. And then we went into what's called a phase 2 clinical trial, which is on the next slide, where we are actively enrolling patients with this rare pediatric tumor called DIPG. Next slide. So let me tell you about this condition. It's very rare. My whole background's been in rare genetic diseases. And the reason we picked a rare disease to start with is because FDA is very flexible and cooperative to bring a new drug, or in this case, a new drug device combination, to an approval based on a small clinical trial. So we've got what's called orphan drug designation. We have what's called fast track designation, all of which sets us up to go to the FDA with data. And if it looks as compelling as the data we have so far, hopefully we'll get an accelerated approval, which doesn't just mean a quick approval. It's actually a defined term that lets you get to an approval with just one trial, and then you can run a confirmatory trial in parallel. So let me tell you about this, disease. It's a tumor that occurs in a part of your brain called the pons, the PONS, that's in your brain stem, and it's sort of between your brain and spinal cord. And it's a very eloquent region of the brain. It's responsible for blood pressure and balance and heart rate and breathing. So by definition, it's inoperable. And sadly, these children have a median survival of only about 9 to 9.5 months. The only treatment so far is radiation. The standard of care has been unchanged since Neil Armstrong's daughter died of it in 1963. And that's really tragic. Next slide. There's a very well-organized patient community here because you can see the impact of radiation and the steroids that are used to counteract the side effects of radiation on these kids. These are before and after shots. Next slide. So what we're doing is we're running a phase 2 clinical trial. Right now we're open at 3 centers, at Children's National in Washington, D.C., at UCSF Children's, and at Nicklaus Children's in Miami. We're opening up another 4 sites this year. These are all leading clinical trial sites in pediatric brain tumors. And what we've shown already, and we've only treated 9 patients so far in the trial, that we're seeing tumor regression, we're seeing extension of survival, but more importantly, we're seeing no side effects. We've now treated actually 30 patients to date. We've treated about 19 patients with glioblastoma as well and seen no side effects. What we need to get to an FDA approval are what are called clinically meaningful endpoints: quality of life, survival, tumor regression, and we're seeing that. Let's go to the next slide. I'm going to just show you some data here because this is the first patient. She was a 5-year-old girl. She turned 6 during our trial. And she was the first to be treated. Because we were going to the FDA with a new therapy, they said only treat half the pons, and then 30 days later, the other half of the pons. And that's what he did. That's what's shown by the purple triangles at the top. And what you see is that we had pretty dramatic tumor regression. The tumor shrunk about 70% in only a few months. But sadly, this disease spread to the lining of her brain, and she passed away. The tumor that we targeted with ultrasound still remained shrunk at the time of her passing. We learned a lot from this child, and the main takeaway message is we got to treat more often. And all the patients since then have been treated monthly and are all still doing well. Now, let me just show you a quick video on the quality of life of this child before and after treatment.
Before the video, you have 18 patients?
We have 9 with DIPG, and we've treated 19 with glioblastoma.
And 18, 27, 20, whatever, 20 plus are still alive.
Yeah, so here I'll just talk about the DIPG indications. So of the 9 patients in this trial, 7 are still alive.
Okay, great.
And
how big does the trial have to be for you to get approval?
Yeah, so FDA doesn't give you a number, but you go to them with data. And when I get to the survival curve, I'll show you how we're thinking about this. But we think if we have about 24 to 27 patients, that should be sufficient for such a rare disease.
And what are typical symptoms of a patient before they're diagnosed with this? Like what leads people to take, hey, my kid needs to go to the doctor?
Yeah, so most kids present with double vision or balance problems. So they usually go to the optometrist. The optometrist says, oh, no, it's not new glasses. You have a more serious problem. Go to the ophthalmologist. They get an MRI, and they're usually told you have a brain tumor. Go home and make memories. That's really what happens. And and you'll see the symptoms. I mean, this is a child. You'll watch her walking, and this is post-radiation. All the kids we've treated post-radiation. Watch her, her feet being kicked up to walk. Her right hand is just dangling, right? And then watch her after a single treatment with sonodynamic therapy. This is the child whose images I just showed you. She loved the ballet, and she, sadly, before she passed away, she had incredible, really good quality of life. Her double vision went away. Her crooked smile was normalized. And you can see her balance is better. Her right arm even can be lifted a little bit, right? And this is another child. We'll get to that in a second. So let's go on to the survival curve. Michael, just skip forward 2 slides. Maybe just a quick note on this slide. This child is our superstar. She's now 20 months post diagnosis. As you can see in the purple triangles, we treated her once. And then when we learned from the first child that we got to treat more often, we've been treating her monthly ever since then. And she has no clinical symptoms. You'll never know she has a brain tumor. Next slide. So I could show you data for each one of these kids, but I'm going to spare you that and just show you the summary. Here's how we're thinking about it. FDA says the endpoint, the outcome measure you need for approval is overall survival. The dashed red line down the middle is a published article on 43 DIPG kids who received radiation and a chemotherapy called temozolomide. And the median survival was 9.5 months. And you can see the pink triangles are kids who sadly passed away and are off trial. But you can see one of them lived actually quite far, for almost twice median survival. And these lines will continue to move to the right. This is the status as of today. And the kids at the bottom of the chart here are those we've treated recently and from the get-go have been treated once monthly. We think they'll do better than the earlier kids who were treated once, and there was a long period of time before we started retreating. So we hope that all these lines will move towards the right. And if we see 12 months, 15 months median survival with no side effects in our business, that actually is a home run. So we're going to keep monitoring these children. We're going to add another 18 children to this trial. And if we see data like this, we're on track for an FDA accelerated approval in about 2 years. Next slide. This slide just tells you that all the kids gained weight during the trial. They grew during the trial, all but one. These are data for the first 5 that we have. And I'll show you one more video on the Lansky score is performance. So if you are, at the peak of health and doing well, you have 100. If you're dead, it's 0. So, these kids are at 80 to 90, and the subject at 5, who was the second child who passed away, you can see his Lansky score dropped dramatically. So, we're going to have an impressive effect in some kids, not so much in others, but we hope that the median survival will be well beyond the 9.5 months. So, Michael, if you can play the other video, this is another child in the trial. You'll see his ability to stand on his own, balance, and you can see he needs support from his physiotherapist or guardian parent there. And he has a really hard time, walking over these hurdles as part of his physiotherapy. So this was 1 month before treatment and about 4 weeks post-radiation. Here's him after treatment. Oops. We lost that, but he was standing on his own, and he does a kick by himself, which you wouldn't expect. So it looks like we're having some Wi-Fi problems, but let's go to the next slide. So we're very gratified by what we're seeing so far in the trial. Go to the next slide. We plan to use the data in DIPG to get to an accelerated approval in the 2026 timeframe, and then expand into other brain tumors and tumors outside the brain. Next slide. The market in DIPG is small from a biotech point of view. We estimate about 250,000 in annual peak sales. But as you start expanding the platform, you can see this gets big very quickly. Next slide. So we're looking to close out our convertible note round. We've filled out 10 out of the 15 million. And this will bridge us to our Series C financing. We have a number of investors in diligence. And the Series C will take us all the way through to our NDA filing, along with the return on mission funding strategy I mentioned earlier. Next slide. In terms of a potential exit here, one way is to certainly take the company to an IPO. The biotech market's just starting to warm up, and we're starting to see a few IPOs. The other is once we get close to an FDA approval, someone will come in and buy the company. Most oncology companies are limited to chemotherapy, radiation, radiopharmaceuticals are hot today. Antibody drug conjugates are hot today. And this is a new way to treat cancer. It has a way to treat multiple cancers. So we can see pharma coming in once we have a proof of concept to buy us. And here are some comps from recent buyouts of new modalities in oncology. Next slide. So this is how I think about it at the big picture. Sonodynamic therapy, a non-invasive way to treat tumors selectively without side effects, allows us to treat patients once monthly in an outpatient procedure. The kids we're treating now go back to school the next day. It's that benign. And because our drug is required to make heme, like hemoglobin, it's very unlikely tumors can become resistant to it. There are no other ways to make heme. And if you compare that to current therapies, right, they all have significant toxicities. We all know about the side effects of radiation and chemotherapy, and we really haven't seen that so far. So let me conclude on the next slide with just summarizing what I've told you today, that we have a new way to treat cancer non-invasively. In a pediatric brain tumor, we are seeing tumor regression, extension and survival, good qualities of life, reversal of some of the symptoms like double vision and loss of balance. And we're on track for an accelerated approval in a couple of years. This is a platform, and the idea is to expand into tumors outside the brain, starting in bladder cancer outside the brain. And our convertible note round will bridge us to our Series C financing. So, Marty, how are we doing on time? Do we? Okay. So maybe we'll stop with the video.
Yeah,
here, then, Michael.
And by the way, I saw the video. It's really phenomenal, the kind of responses you're getting from these children. And the survival rate is dramatic, right? So two things. One is that you need 5 million to do more testing. Right?
Yeah.
For Nicholas Hospital, is that what it is?
Yes. So we are. I didn't mention this, but we're getting a additional non-dilutive funding. That's something called the Florida Brain State Initiative that's committed some money to Nicholas Children's Hospital in Miami. We're also waiting any day now to hear about a $62 million ARPA-H grant that we applied for that would also be non-dilutive. So, we're trying to just, have a bridge right now because obviously if we get 62 million from ARPA-H, that'll help set the valuation for our Series C.
How many grants have you received so far? How much non-dilutive capital have you received so far?
So we received about 10 million to date, and I think more to come. We've had some favorable reviews from other agencies too.
So can you go back can we get the slideshow back? And I'm not sure where it is. I have questions based on the slideshow. Just go closer to what is the regular pricing on a product like this? So, I mean, it's an orphan drug. I mean, is it like $1 million a year, or, I mean, what's the current pricing for treatments, and what's the?
Yeah, so there's no current drug, right? And there's certainly no drug that confers this type of benefit.
But there's a current treatment. So what's the equivalent treatment?
No, so the only treatment right now is radiation. So the standard of care, for these kids, can be quite expensive. And, we haven't done formal pricing studies, but, if you look at the cost of, game-changing oncology drugs, they're usually in the, $100,000 to $200,000 per patient per year.
What's the cost of radiation again? I'm sorry.
Radiation is pretty, inexpensive. It's probably in the tens of thousands of dollars.
And so what would you expect pricing to be on something like this?
So our models assume a couple $100,000 per patient per year.
Okay. And it's not necessarily a cure, right?
No, it's not. I mean, I think that's a very high bar. I hope it is, but we don't know. So in some patients, if we can keep them alive, and as Mitch Berger, who's, used to be chair of neurosurgery at UCSF, says, can this technology convert a deadly disease to a chronic manageable illness? That's the vision.
Sure.
But we don't know because we're still in the trials.
Even if you could postpone it for who knows what technology will come up in the future, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and the fact that we're not seeing any side effects, I think make adoption a lot easier.
Great. Any other questions in the audience? Yeah. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so the question was like, what is our IP on this? Because this could be used to treat many cancers. So it's really the combination of the drug and the device. And what's our special sauce are really the sonication parameters that treat each tumor. We're finding out they're different depending on different tumors. So that's good from an IP point of view. It's also non-obvious because we found in our first in-man clinical study, which I didn't share with you, that as you increase ultrasound energy, you actually see a decrease in effect. And that's been predicted by our chief scientific officer. So finding that optimal dose of energy is really our special sauce, and that's what we protected. Yes.
Is there down the road, or your thoughts on how your technology might work in combination with existing therapies?
Great question. Everything in oncology is usually a combination, and there's nothing with our technology that precludes combination with other drugs. In fact, our neurosurgeons and other oncologists want to do trials combining some chemotherapy with our treatment. For glioblastoma, where the current therapy is surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation, one of our thoughts was, can we go in before, right after surgery? We don't want to put the neurosurgeons out of business, but randomize patients to standard of care, chemo and radiation, or to our therapy and see if they need chemo and radiation. Wouldn't that be great not to subject patients to the side effects of chemo and radiation? So that's the plan. Yes, just. Yeah, the question was, have you got a rare pediatric designation? Not yet. So the plan for this year is to apply for a breakthrough designation. On the pediatric designation, I'm not sure we'll be eligible because the drug is actually already available as an imaging agent, but that's something we have to figure out.
Well, fantastic. I think a great presentation. I wish we'd had the video up and running better, but that's okay.